I hid my silver eyes in ash until the Alpha King lifted my chin gently. Now it lay in silent mourning. Stones cracked and blackened from fire, roofs sagged under the weight of neglect, and the air was thick with ash that fell like snow from a sky hidden behind clouds of gray. She moved through the shadows, small and deliberate, her footsteps soft against the rubble. Her hands were smeared with soot, and a thin layer of ash covered her hair. She kept her silver eyes hidden. The world feared them, the world whispered about them, and she had learned that silver eyes were not a gift, they were a curse. The villagers avoided her path. Mothers pulled their children closer, merchants shuttered windows, and the guards turned their heads. She had long learned that hiding was safer than standing out. But today, she did not hide entirely. She walked with a quiet purpose, carrying a small satchel of stolen bread and water from the edges of the city. Her chin was lowered, her eyes cast down, a mask of gray soot hiding what none were ready to see. They called her the silver-eyed exile, a woman of power and danger, a woman whose gaze could see the truths men feared. But no one truly knew her story, her loss, her grief, the fire that had taken her family and the kingdom that had turned its back on her. She had no one, yet she carried within her a spark that refused to die. From the palace atop the hill he watched, the Alpha King. His throne was carved from blackened oak, his crown heavy with jewels that caught the dying light. Few had seen him close, for he was a man of power and mystery, feared as much as he was respected. Yet, even he was not immune to curiosity. Reports had reached him of a woman wandering the ash-strewn streets with eyes that gleamed like silver in the dark. He did not move to command her capture immediately. Something about the way she walked, quiet yet deliberate, struck a chord in him. Most people trembled at the thought of the crown. She moved as if she belonged to no one. He was intrigued, though he would never admit it aloud. She paused at the ruins of a chapel. The roof had collapsed, the statues of saints shattered, but the walls held the echo of prayers long forgotten. She pressed her back to the cold stone, inhaling the scent of dust and rain. Here, she felt a moment of safety, a pause from the eyes that always seemed to follow. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her satchel. The bread was stale, but it would fill her stomach for a few hours. She ate slowly, chewing carefully as if each bite required strength. Her silver eyes, though hidden beneath ash, reflected the dim light. In their depths was a sadness she could not hide, a grief she had carried for years. A sudden sound made her stiffen. Footsteps, not the distant shuffle of villagers, but purposeful, controlled steps that carried authority. Her heart raced, but she did not run. She had learned long ago that fleeing sometimes drew more attention than standing still. The Alpha King stepped into the chapel, his boots silent against the broken stone floor. He moved with the grace of a predator, his presence commanding, yet not without a strange softness she could not name. His eyes were dark, almost black, yet they carried a weight of understanding. He paused a few feet from her, studying her. "You hide your eyes well," he said, his voice low and steady, "but I see them all the same." She stiffened, gripping her satchel tightly. "I am nothing to you," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She hoped that asserting her insignificance would protect her. He tilted his head slightly, a gesture both curious and amused. "Nothing," he repeated. "The ashes tell a different story. They speak of fire, loss, and of a strength you do not yet know you possess." Her silver eyes, hidden beneath the layer of ash, flinched. No one had ever spoken to her with such insight, and it frightened her as much as it intrigued her. She wanted to retreat, to hide deeper in the shadows, but something held her in place. "You are brave," he said after a moment, stepping closer. "Or foolish, perhaps both." She did not answer. Words were dangerous. They could betray her thoughts, her fears, her past. Instead, she lowered her gaze further, pretending to inspect a broken stone on the floor. He knelt slowly in front of her, a gesture both intimate and commanding. "The fire took much from you," he said softly, "but it did not take everything. Look at me." Her throat tightened. She did not look. She could not. To show her silver eyes was to reveal a truth the world might not survive. Yet his presence was compelling, and the gentle authority in his voice stirred something deep within her, a sense of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. For a long moment there was silence between them. The wind howled outside, carrying ash and memories alike. She could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy yet not cruel, searching yet not invasive. Finally, with careful hands, he lifted her chin. His touch was light, almost reverent. "Do not hide from what you are," he whispered. "Not from me." Her heart thudded violently. His eyes held no judgment, no fear, only a quiet insistence that she could not ignore. She wanted to pull away, to retreat into the ashes, but her body remained frozen. She felt exposed, yet for the first time she felt a strange comfort in being seen. "You do not understand me," she said, her voice trembling. "I am dangerous even to myself." He smiled faintly, a shadow of something softer hidden beneath the hardness of a king. "Perhaps," he said. "But even the dangerous have their place in the world, and sometimes they have a place beside me." Her breath caught. That thought, the idea that she might belong somewhere, even beside the Alpha King, was both terrifying and thrilling. For so long she had wandered through ashes, invisible and unimportant. And now here was someone who saw her, not for the fear her eyes inspired, but for the strength and fire within her. The wind shifted, carrying the distant sound of a bell from the ruined city. The shadows outside seemed to grow longer, darker, and alive. They were not alone. Others were watching, waiting, and perhaps plotting. The world beyond the chapel was still dangerous, filled with whispers, rumors, and enemies. He released her chin gently, yet the impact of his touch lingered. "Come with me," he said, "not as a prisoner, not as a subject, but as someone who might yet change everything." She hesitated. Fear warred with curiosity, grief with hope. Every instinct told her to run, to hide, to keep her silver eyes buried in ash forever. Yet something in his gaze, steady and unwavering, made her want to step forward. The ashes fell around them, a veil of gray that separated the past from what could be. In that moment, the ruins felt less like a tomb and more like the beginning of something new, something dangerous and beautiful. Her hand brushed against the satchel at her side. The bread within was dry, the water stale, and yet she realized she had enough strength to follow him, if only for a little while. She lifted her head, letting the ash fall from her hair and face, revealing a glimmer of silver beneath. He noticed as if he had been waiting for this. His dark eyes softened, a shadow of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Good," he said. "We begin there." Outside, the wind carried a faint scent of smoke from distant fires, a reminder that the kingdom was not yet healed, that danger still lingered. But inside the ruined chapel, a fragile connection had formed, a spark of trust, of recognition, and perhaps of something deeper. She did not know if she was ready to trust him fully. She did not know if the world would ever forgive her silver eyes. But for the first time in years, she felt seen. And that was enough for now to step out of the shadows. As they walked from the chapel, side by side yet not quite touching, the Alpha King glanced at her once more. "Do not hide from me again," he said, his voice a promise and a warning. Her heart pounded, her silver eyes catching the faint light of the dying day. She nodded, though cautiously. "I will try," she whispered. The wind howled again, carrying the scent of ash and the faint echo of a city in mourning. The ruins stretched endlessly before them, a labyrinth of danger and secrets. And somewhere beyond the hill and shadowed towers, eyes watched them, waiting. But for now, the silver-eyed exile walked beside the Alpha King, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Cliffhanger. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a shadow detached itself from the ruined towers, a figure cloaked in black, watching them with eyes that glinted like steel. The Alpha King did not see it, but she did, a flicker of fear stirring in her chest. Someone knew she had revealed her silver eyes. Someone was coming. The palace loomed like a dark sentinel over Asheville, its blackened towers cutting into the gray sky. Inside, opulence and shadow intertwined. Velvet tapestries hung from the walls, embroidered with gold that caught the dim light of flickering torches. Crystal chandeliers reflected the glow of countless candles, but even their brilliance could not banish the chill that seemed to linger in the hallways. She followed the Alpha King through the grand corridors, her footsteps quiet on the polished stone floor. Her silver eyes, now uncovered, caught every shadow, every reflection, every movement. She felt exposed here, in a place designed to display power and control. The servants whispered and curtsied as they passed, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Do not let them see fear in your eyes," the Alpha King said softly, his voice a low rumble that seemed to echo through the hall. "Even the smallest hint of weakness invites danger." She swallowed, keeping her gaze forward. His presence was both commanding and reassuring, a paradox she could not untangle. Every step beside him reminded her of the delicate balance between power and vulnerability, trust and suspicion. The palace was not only a home but a fortress. Rumors spoke of hidden passages, enchanted doors, and guards whose loyalty was tested only by the king's voice. She learned quickly that every corner held secrets, and every shadow could conceal threats. They entered a private chamber, dimly lit and warm with a fire that crackled in the hearth. The walls were lined with books, scrolls, and artifacts from ages past. The Alpha King gestured for her to sit, and she obeyed, though her body remained tense. "You are safe here," he said, closing the door behind them. "For now." She studied him cautiously. "Safe for now," she repeated, testing the weight of his words. "Do you trust me so easily?" He smiled faintly, but it did not reach his eyes. "Trust is earned," he said, "but I sense in you a strength few possess. It is rare, even in those who serve me." Her heart fluttered at his words, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of hiding had taught her that appearances were everything. "Strength can be dangerous," she replied. "Even to those who wield it," he nodded, as if confirming a truth he already knew. "Yes, and yet without it the kingdom falls. You have a role to play, whether you choose it or not." The weight of his words pressed upon her. She had spent years wandering the ashes of a ruined city, believing her life had no meaning beyond survival. And now here she was in the presence of the king, her eyes uncovered, her past exposed, and a fate she could not yet understand waiting for her. Days passed, and she learned the rhythms of the palace. She moved through the corridors, observing, listening, and slowly understanding the delicate web of alliances, betrayals, and secrets. The Alpha King watched her closely, often silent, sometimes offering guidance, sometimes allowing her to find her own way. Their interactions were a dance of power and tension. He was both teacher and enigma, commanding yet strangely patient. She was wary yet curious, strong yet quietly vulnerable. Each conversation, each glance, carried an unspoken weight, a tension that neither could fully name. One evening, the palace erupted in alarm. A shadow moved along the outer walls, a figure cloaked in black, carrying a weapon that gleamed in the moonlight. The servants screamed, guards rushed to their positions, and the silver-eyed woman froze, her instincts sharper than anyone's. The Alpha King moved with swift authority, drawing a blade from his side and leading her through secret passages to a hidden tower. "Stay close," he commanded. "Do not reveal your eyes unnecessarily." Her heart raced, but she followed without hesitation, the thrill of danger intertwined with the strange comfort of his presence. She had survived alone for years, yet here beside him she felt both protected and challenged. From the tower they watched the intruder below, a dark figure moving with purpose, heading straight for the royal treasury. "They know you are here," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the figure. "They are testing us, probing for weaknesses." She clenched her fists. "Then we give them none," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. He looked at her, surprise flickering in his dark eyes. "You are ready to fight," he observed. "You are not just silver-eyed, you are fire." Together, they descended the tower and intercepted the intruder in the grand hall. The battle was swift and precise. Guards arrived, but it was their combined instincts, his experience and her acute senses, that ended the threat. The figure fled into the shadows, leaving only a faint whisper of threat behind. Afterward, they stood in the hall, breathing heavily, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins. She looked at him, really looked, and saw something beyond the mask of the king. A vulnerability, a past filled with loss, and a heart that had known loneliness. "You risk much," she said softly, "for someone you barely know." He sheathed his blade and turned to face her. "Perhaps," he admitted, "or perhaps I see something in you that I cannot ignore, something worth protecting, worth guiding." Her breath caught. The words carried a weight that unsettled her, stirring emotions she had long buried. She wanted to retreat, to hide behind the ashes, yet she remained, drawn by the pull of something she could not name. Days turned into weeks, and their bond deepened, though neither spoke of it openly. They trained together, explored the secrets of the palace, and faced small threats that tested their trust and coordination. Through it all, she discovered that her silver eyes were more than a curse. They were a gift. They allowed her to see through illusions, to sense danger, to uncover truths hidden to ordinary eyes. The Alpha King watched her closely, guiding her, yet never pushing too far. He shared glimpses of his own past, the betrayals and losses that had hardened him, the loneliness that his crown demanded. She began to understand the weight he carried, and in turn, he began to trust her with the parts of himself he had kept hidden. One evening, in the quiet of the royal library, she found a book that spoke of ancient curses and powers of the Silveride. The words resonated with her, revealing that her eyes were tied to a prophecy, one that could either save or doom the kingdom. The Alpha King approached silently, watching her read. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. She looked up, her silver eyes meeting his dark gaze. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I know that the choices we make, they matter. Perhaps more than we realize." He nodded, a shadow of a smile touching his lips. "Then we choose wisely," he said, "together." As they studied the book, a chill ran through the air. Shadows seemed to move independently, the torches flickering as if warning of unseen eyes. Outside, the wind carried whispers of magic, of curses long dormant, of forces that had been waiting for the Silveride to awaken. Suddenly, the doors to the library slammed open. A figure, cloaked in darkness, stepped inside. The air grew heavy, charged with power and intent. The Alpha King stepped in front of her, his blade drawn, but she felt a strange calm. Her eyes glinted with silver light, reflecting the strength she had learned to embrace. The figure spoke, its voice like ice over stone. "So, you are the one who hides her eyes in ash," it said. "The prophecy speaks of you. The kingdom trembles at your awakening." She felt a shiver, not of fear but of recognition. This was no ordinary intruder. This was the force that had haunted her since childhood, tied to the fires that destroyed her home. The Alpha King's hand brushed hers, a silent gesture of reassurance. Together they faced the shadow, their combined presence stronger than either had imagined. "You will not harm her," he said, his voice steady and filled with authority that made even the shadows pause. The figure laughed, a sound that echoed through the library like a warning bell. "Harm? No, she will awaken her power, and then everything will change." The air grew colder and the shadows thickened. The silver-eyed woman's heart raced, but she did not falter. She had faced death and loss before, yet this was different. This was destiny calling, a challenge that demanded both courage and trust. The Alpha King's gaze met hers. "Whatever comes," he said, "we face it together. You are not alone." She nodded, feeling the truth in his words. For the first time, she believed that she did not have to carry the weight of the world alone. Her eyes burned with silver light, not hidden, not ashamed, but ready. The shadow took a step forward, the air vibrating with power. So begins the true test, it said. And then, as the torches flickered and the wind howled through the palace, the silver-eyed woman and the Alpha King stood together, ready to confront the forces that sought to claim the kingdom and their destinies. Cliffhanger. Outside the palace walls, unseen eyes watched, and the night carried whispers of a greater darkness approaching. The prophecy was awakening, and the silver-eyed woman's hidden power was about to be revealed in a way that could either save the kingdom or destroy everything she had come to protect. The wind carried a chill as they crossed the wildlands beyond Asheville. The forest loomed tall and dark, shadows twisting around ancient trunks. Mist clung to the ground, swirling like spirits that whispered secrets. The Alpha King moved with confidence, yet even he seemed cautious of the unseen dangers. Beside him, the silver-eyed woman's eyes gleamed, reflecting the faint light, her silver gaze cutting through the gloom. "Are we far from the palace?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Far enough that no one can follow without knowing it," he replied, scanning the shadows. "And close enough that the prophecy can still be fulfilled. We must face what awaits." She nodded, feeling the weight of the journey pressing against her shoulders. The ashes of her past, the ruins of her home, the secrets of her power, all had led her to this moment. Yet alongside the king, she felt a strength she had never known. They reached a clearing where the earth had been scarred by ancient battles. Stones jutted like broken teeth, and the wind carried a faint hum of magic. Here, the air seemed thicker, charged with anticipation. The Alpha King drew a deep breath. "This is where it begins," he said. "The one who cast the curse waits here, and we must face them together." From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in black, radiating a power that made the air tremble. The fallen sorcerer who had haunted her past in the kingdom's history stood before them, eyes like coals, a smile twisted with malice. "You are brave," the sorcerer said, voice echoing unnaturally. "But bravery alone will not save you or your kingdom." The silver-eyed woman's gaze met his, and she felt the pull of the magic around her. Her eyes flared with silver light, revealing the power she had long hidden. The sorcerer staggered slightly, caught off guard by the strength she now wielded. The Alpha King stepped forward, his blade gleaming with the reflection of her eyes. "We do not face this alone," he said, his voice steady and commanding. Together they approached the sorcerer. The ground trembled beneath them, shadows twisting into forms that reached for them, trying to block their path. But she did not falter. Her silver eyes illuminated the true path, revealing weaknesses in the dark magic that the sorcerer wielded. With each step she felt her power grow, not as a curse but as a gift. She could see the truth behind illusions, the lies hidden within shadows, and the heart of the magic that had long plagued the kingdom. The battle began in earnest. The sorcerer hurled spells that crackled like lightning, shadows that tried to bind and blind them, and whispers that sought to twist their minds. But the Alpha King moved with skill and precision, blocking, striking, and protecting her. She moved alongside him, her eyes casting silver light that shattered illusions and cut through the darkness. At one point, the sorcerer split into multiple shadows, each one a reflection of his own form, aiming to confuse and overwhelm them. She closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself, and let her silver vision guide her. She could see the true body among the illusions. With a cry, she lunged forward, her hand glowing, striking the sorcerer's heart with a force born of years of pain and survival. The sorcerer screamed, the shadows around him dissolving into mist. The air grew still, and the wind carried a sense of release, as if the world itself had been holding its breath. He fell to his knees, defeated, yet his voice carried one last warning. "This is not the end. The prophecy is far from finished." The Alpha King stepped beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "It is enough for today," he said. "You were magnificent." She looked at him, silver eyes shining, and realized that fear no longer dominated her heart. She had faced the past, embraced her power, and survived. For the first time, she felt whole. They returned to the palace in silence, the weight of the night still pressing lightly on them. Yet inside, a quiet understanding had formed. They were no longer just king and exile. They were partners, equals bound by trials, trust, and unspoken emotion. In the private chamber where their journey had first truly begun, she sat near the fire, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. He entered quietly, closing the door behind him, his presence filling the room without words. "You have grown," he said, voice soft, almost unguarded. "Stronger than I imagined. And yet, she prompted, her gaze meeting his. He knelt before her, not as a king commanding a subject, but as a man showing vulnerability. "I have grown too," he admitted. "Because of you. Because of this journey, because of your courage, and because I cannot deny what I feel." Her breath caught. The words, simple yet profound, touched something deep within her. She had wandered in ashes, hidden, feared, and yet here was a man who saw her fully, without judgment, without fear. She began, unsure of what words could capture the depth of her emotions. "I never thought anyone could see me like this, and yet you do." He lifted her hand gently, holding it between his. "Not because of your eyes alone," he said, "but because of the strength they reveal, because of you." For a long moment, they simply stayed like that, hand in hand, eyes locked, hearts beating in quiet rhythm. The past seemed distant, the kingdom safe, yet the weight of destiny lingered. They had won this battle, but life and prophecy would always carry new challenges. Finally she spoke, her voice steady with new confidence. "Then we face whatever comes together." He nodded, a shadow of a smile crossing his face. "Together," he repeated. Outside, the wind carried a whisper of the night, rustling the banners and flickering the torchlight. The city lay quiet, recovering from the long shadows that had threatened it. Asheville would heal slowly, but with the silver-eyed woman and the Alpha King standing as protectors, hope had returned. They stood together at the balcony, looking over the kingdom. The stars reflected in her silver eyes, and the moonlight cast a gentle glow on his face. For the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine a future, not dominated by fear or past loss, but by trust, courage, and the bond they had forged in shadow and fire. "You were right," she said softly, leaning slightly against the balcony railing. "The choices we make, they do matter." He looked at her, a depth of emotion in his eyes that no crown could command. "And some choices are made easier when you have someone to share the burden." She smiled faintly, feeling the warmth of connection that had grown from ashes and shadow. "Then let us face the future together," she whispered. The night air was calm now, carrying only the faint rustle of leaves and the distant cry of an owl. Yet in that calm, there was power, there was promise, and there was a love that had been forged through trials, fear, and courage. As they turned from the balcony, hand in hand, a new dawn began to color the horizon. The silver-eyed woman felt the light upon her face, the warmth in her heart, and the certainty that she was no longer hiding. She had embraced who she was, and in doing so, had found a place not just in the kingdom, but beside the Alpha King. The prophecy had awakened, but so had she. And with him, she was ready for whatever else the world might demand. Cliffhanger/final emotional hook. As the first rays of sunlight touched the towers of Asheville, a distant tremor shook the earth, a reminder that darkness may return, but together, the Alpha King and the silver-eyed woman would face it, their bond unbroken, their hearts intertwined, and their destiny unfolding.